All right, let's talk about something called Mittelschmerz. Now, I know it sounds super complicated, maybe a little intimidating, but I promise it describes a feeling a lot of us have probably felt. So let's dive right in and figure out what's going on. Okay, so picture this. You're just going about your day. It's roughly the middle of your cycle, and then, ouch. You feel this little pang. Maybe it's sharp, maybe it's just a dull ache, but it's definitely on one side of your lower belly. Sound familiar at all? Well, you're not imagining it. It's a real thing, and it actually has a name. And that name is Mittelschmerz. Yeah, it's German, and it literally just means middle pain. I mean, how perfect is that? It tells you exactly when it happens, right in the middle of your cycle, and what it is. A pain. Simple as that. Basically, it's just the fancy, technical term for ovulation pain. That's it. It's that feeling some people get right as one of their ovaries releases an egg. And the good news is, it's almost always completely harmless and doesn't stick around for long.
So, okay, we know what it's called, but what does this middle pain actually feel like? Let's get into it and decode the specific signals your body might be sending you.
All right, so the number one sign is that one-sided pain in your pelvis. And what's kind of cool is that it can actually switch sides each month depending on which ovary is on duty. For some, it's a dull ache. For others, it's more of a sharp, sudden twinge. It can be super quick, like just a few minutes, or it might hang around for a day or even two. You might also see some other classic ovulation signs, like that clear, stretchy discharge, or maybe a tiny bit of spotting. And sometimes, yeah, you might even feel a little bit nauseous.
Okay, so that's what it feels like. But what about the why? What is actually happening inside your body to cause that feeling? Let's get into the science of it all.
So, scientists think it could be one of three things. First, imagine the little sac, the follicle, where the egg is growing. As it gets bigger, it literally stretches the surface of your ovary. That stretching could be what causes that dull ache. Then, when the egg finally bursts out, a little bit of fluid and maybe some blood comes out with it. That fluid can irritate the lining of your abdomen, and that could be the sharp pain you feel. And finally, your fallopian tube has to kind of contract and spasm to grab the egg, and you might be feeling those little contractions. It's a pretty amazing process when you think about it.
Okay, let's pause here because this next part is really important. Mittelschmerz is usually no big deal at all, but you absolutely need to know when a pain isn't just normal ovulation pain and when it might be a red flag for something else.
So let's put them side by side. On one hand, you've got your typical Mittelschmerz. It's on one side, it's temporary, and it's happening right around the middle of your cycle. Predictable, right? But then look at the other column. If your pain is so bad you can't function, if you've got a fever or you're vomiting, or if the pain just is not going away and maybe even getting worse, that's not Mittelschmerz. Those are huge red flags, and that's your cue to call a doctor, for sure.
And here's why you have to pay attention to those red flags. Pain like that can sometimes be a sign of something much more serious, like appendicitis, pelvic inflammatory disease, or even a dangerous ectopic pregnancy. And those are all things that need medical attention right away. So the bottom line is, please don't just brush off severe or weird pain.
Whew, okay. We've gone from a German word all the way to fallopian tube spasms. So let's boil all of this down to the one single sentence you really need to remember from all this.
And here it is. Think of this as your little cheat sheet. Mittelschmerz equals mid-cycle, one-sided ovulation pain. It's short, it can be sharp, it's usually harmless, and it shows up around day 14. That's the whole story in a nutshell.
So that leads me to one last question for you. Now that you actually have a name for this feeling and you understand the incredible why behind it, does that change how you think about your body and your cycle at all? Something to think about.